Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded. I did draw it earlier, but anyway I messed up, so and the file got lost. So what I'm going to do is draw a tree of life. Start with a construction line, and I'll put the links to the video because I have done one previously, but this is an even more simplified version, and it sort of links to that Geometrology couple pieces I did, and sort of distances between planets, relative size of Earth and Moon through yard, meter, and the Egyptian royal cubit. So I'm drawing in with a firstly a Vesica Pisces. I say in all the videos, really take your time. To get it really precise, I'd have my head a little bit closer and really get the point right where I want it, just so my head doesn't obscure the camera any more than what my hands are. So double Vesica, now you have all the points that you need to draw a tree of life. And so place your pencil down, line it up, draw a construction line. I don't even need to go all that distance, I'm just going to do it anyway. Pencil down, line it up. I'll do it this side so I get better light. This is based on the more common tree of life. It's a Porte Lucis, which is a bit different. I'm using the KIrcher. I'll put some images in along the way and show you a few other versions of it. But there we have all of the points of the tree of life to create it. We don't need the compass, or at least at that setting anymore. And to save time, I'm going to draw a couple of circles in permanent marker. Usually I do it in pencil and then go over it at the end, but these circles are will be permanent. They're part of the structure, and so we can do them straight away. And I don't need to draw any other lines or any other points along the way. Again, looking at it, I can see that's a little bit off, but follow. Again, I usually, I'd have my head right down. I don't want to obscure the camera, but now we can draw a series of circles to make sure. Because the smaller the circle you draw with a compass, the more likely you are to for it to get messed up. So try and keep the marker lower or equal, or at least lower than what the center point is. Hopefully, okay, one. Right, so be very careful now with these. I don't want to mess the whole thing up. Top. Yep, that's right. One here. Probably made them a bit too big for my liking, but they're okay. And there are all the large circles. Now I won't do all of it, the writing and the detail. I'll put a link to a downloadable version as well of the KIrcher one, because that's the more common design. There are a lot of similarities. I'll try to remember to put a link into LewisMasonic video as well, where they talk about, because there's a column of mercy and a column of severity and other features in there. I'll leave that type of research and interpretation up to you. I'm sort of interested in the geometry. One thing that all the Hermeticists, all of the alchemists, something that they all shared, even though they might have differed in their, say, philosophical, spiritual views, was the geometry. So that's the foundation stone upon which it comes, and that's the one thing that they really do all share. And with these type of, you know, whether it's the 7-pointed star or these other symbols and elements that they used in their design. Now, for instance, John Dee's famous for his, for instance, talking with the dead. Okay, that's one of the things. He's also an astrologer, also an alchemist, but he was a professor of Euclidean geometry as well. So whether it's Albert Dürer, Robert Flood, you name it, they were geometricians, and that's all just like the foundation that they all share. So that's why I like to show that, and I don't, you know, I'm sure maybe some people are, but my, let's just say, spiritual or philosophical beliefs are really not something of great importance. I don't pretend to, you know, like I have my ideas, but I don't know those things, and there's more than enough people out there who share. Okay, so those circles, I'm in permanent marker now. I have to do a really small circle with a compass like this, it's very, very easy to muck it up. Probably this coin's a little bit too big, but one, you know, if you find anything that's circular, if you have a few different sizes in your drawing kit, you know, like one way would be, I don't know, like you get a, you know, something like that's about the size. So you could use, you know, anything that's round you can use. So if you're going to do it regularly with drawing, these are cool little compass for drawing circles that are really small. It's a really cool tool, and so instead of it being, well, like a V shape, it's a pin. So a compass is what, you know, sort of has to rotate. But with this, you put the pin down on your center, and then you hold that down, and then you can just rotate this thing around. And for really, really small circles, it's the best way to go. So if you can get one and you draw, you know, if you draw regularly, this would be a really good thing to have in your toolkit there. The purpose of these small circles is because there's a series of lines that connect the tree of life. I want to use this circle as a guide for the thickness of the bars. So I'll draw the lines in a moment, but these small circles, these are just really construction lines, just to give the width of all those joining. Now, God, I've already forgotten again, but you have Sephiro, which I believe is the circles, and then you have these joining pieces, which I can't remember the name of, like these bars that join, and I can't remember them at the moment. Also, I'll mention it later once I do the main design, because you can add it in. I'm not going to draw it in. The hidden Sephiro, some people call it, or the dart. Okay, so there's all the main points that we need. And now there's just a series of lines that are going to join. And you just follow along. So I'll begin with, because it's Vesica's, what you're going to have is hexagons and equilateral triangles. And so this first we'll draw, there's an equilateral triangle down here at the bottom. Again, if you put your point where you want it to be, and then you can adjust and move the ruler around, because if you try and adjust it like as you adjust one side, the other will go out. So if you're drawing regularly, that's a good way to sort of keep your lines. And because I'm using a thicker pencil, try and take account of the width. So we have a really fine point, not so much of an issue, but if you're using a darker point, yeah, just try and keep account of the width and sort of add that when you are lining up your straight edge. now this line actually carries all the way through to the top, so I should have done that originally. Okay, so now with all these lines I'm going to the centres. When I rub it out, I sort of like the idea of having the construction lines sort of vaguely visible. If I wasn't doing this on camera, I would include all the construction lines and I'd use a very light pencil. But I just wanted to, just so that it shows up on camera, I need to do it darker. I think that the construction lines give it a little bit of, it's like a hidden instruction book. If someone comes and looks up close, you can see what's actually happening. Now, not every point will line up, so just beginning with these, there's a certain arrangement of how these need to line up. So now I've got to do an X through there. I can see it, maybe it doesn't show up on camera. I was a little bit off, again, take your time. I'm just doing this in like sort of filming instruction speed. And one line across here. Then we have a hexagon here as well. So as I said, like we have equilateral triangles, we have hexagons, and a recent video I was talking about like how you make all the set squares that come with the drawing kit. So the heart angle of a hexagon is 60 degrees, which you have there, and so we have, it's all about 60 degrees, 30 degrees, 120 degrees. And we have now all the lines, one more across. Across here, and so you might even see the hexagon. It sort of will form like a 2D representation of a 3D cube. Okay, now the last lines are from here up to the top corner, and those are all so they're the paths of what's it called? Yeah, I think there's part. Oh no, there's another word for it, but we have like sephiroth, and then we have the paths joining it. That's the basic elements of it. Now there are different designs. Like some you'll see where these lines overlap, like one will feed over or will go under. There are certain patterns. There are variations here and there. But I'm going to do the KIrcher design. Now in the centre I just drew these small circles. So these lines we need to turn into bars, and that's why I drew these small circles. They're going to give us equal. I'll use the fine point now, just to make sure that they're all equal in their width. Okay, now another point. These paths are only going to go from the inside of a circle to the other side of a circle. Now I'm going to rub that out later, but I made a boo-boo. Now if you're doing this in permanent mark, you really need to be sure, so I'll line it up. And then just from circle to circle edge. And now because these are all joining, so we can do, just simply need to line up the ruler once. But again, just remember to stop at the circle, stop at this, and then carry through. Again, especially, it's just an easy way to ruin your work. And even though this is a dark lead, the defined point, just hope it does show up on camera. Stop the camera for a minute, make sure I didn't lose it. Okay, so I didn't lose it. I've had just nothing but trouble the last couple of days with filming. Okay, so now just to carry on, we're going to draw these pathways. between the Sephiro. Again, just keep in mind you only go from circle to circle, not all the way through. If you do it with pencil, start off with a pencil and then you can erase it. Now, because I didn't do that circle right on the point, I notice there's a little bit of a difference, but these are the type of things you can again just try and just do everything slow, do it accurate, and it'll be alright. I'm channeling my inner Bob Ross. Now, because we've already started to do it, so this line that I'm going to, it should like touch the corner of that bar that we've already done. Should it? Well, if I spaced it right, it should. Yeah. Okay. The more lines you do, it starts to it's just a matter of following through with all, make sure you get them all. Again, we can do all the way across, but we need, remember, so we can line it up once, but we need to stop at each circle again. Sorry to repeat myself, but it's just say in chess, the one who wins is the one who makes the least mistakes, or the second to last mistake. That's one of the reasons well I enjoy the drawing of it. I think it's meditative. I think it also does something with your the way you think, and it enhances your sort of logic, and but there's a lot of benefits from it, and I can't think of any negatives unless you become obsessed with it, of course. Again, I've lined, so this is all the way along, but just again, just from circle to circle. And also, if you draw, or if you do these, you might not be, but there's a sense of sort of ownership with it, and I think there is again like meditation, but there is I don't like the term, but a spiritual element to it, because a lot of these structures like hexagons, triangles, pentagons, it's not just something for geometry class. It's these can be found in the ways molecules are arranged, the hexagon and the pole of Saturn, or the pentagon at the pole of Jupiter, beehives and that type. It is very it's not just purely sort of academic. It's just everything is anything that has a shape. Maybe some would say even there's a shape and form to spirituality or their philosophy. I couldn't tell you that, but definitely a beauty in geometry, and so you don't need to learn trig or all these complex equations, and that's the more you know, it's the better. You can't gather all the knowledge you can. It costs nothing and is no weight to bear. One of my favourite sayings I heard. but it's not necessary to, you can attach yourself to it, get an understanding of it, appreciation of it, and just purely for art's sake as well. So if you're an artiste, you can use these as almost like hidden patterns inside the way that you structure your composition. The math constants such as the golden ratio, square root of 3, square root of 2, which is sort of basics in this geometry. You'll also find them in whether it's the Far East all the way over to the ancient sites across the world, and still in churches, temples, major public buildings today. Okay, looking over it, I think I've got all the points covered. Missing any? Now we can bring in the marker and start to be careful with this. I'm going to use the smaller one. So now I'll be joining them up. Now, for instance, these two run over one another. So now that you're going to a permanent marker, to follow the KIrcher design, the lines won't run over one another. Now, for instance, I'll start here. Actually, rather than use this, because this will bleed through, I'm going to use a red ballpoint. So we have a bar going across and we have one going up. I don't want to cross the lines over, it sort of should be an open pathway in all directions. And I only go again as to the edge of the circle. Probably best way to be, once you line it up, start at the circle and come down. Get a nice clean starting point like there. I'll just run over it a little bit. Again, that would be, in the geometry schools, the hard task master might say, well, start again, son. Got to get it right. It's said to have been, it was written at a Platonic academy, where it was written at the time of Plato. Above the door it said, let no one ignorant of geometry enter my door. So like Plato and the philosophy, but Platonic solids. Back in the day, not too long ago, philosophy was a term for science. So natural philosophy was pretty much the term for someone who would be considered a scientist now, be called a scientist nowadays. For instance, that famous line in Shakespeare, was it in Hamlet? There is more betwixt heaven and earth, Horatio, than is dreamt of in your philosophy. So the philosophy being like yours, there's more between heaven and earth than is dreamt of in your science. Basically, you could translate it that one way. But there is the old, maybe not so now, but in the olden days, go back to the Hermetics, 15, 16, 1700s, and all the major universities and schools, places of learning were at cathedrals, and theology was like an essential part for, if you wanted to study, you had to be a theologian. For instance, Isaac Newton, he became the master, is it Cambridge? Was it? I think it's Cambridge. Or one of but even though he was sort of more on the atheist side, to become the college master or whatever it was, he had to also become an ordained priest. Something along those lines. Might get some of those details might be incorrect, but if you're into it, you probably know what I'm talking about. And as I'm going over these in the red ink, it's maybe easy to miss a line, but you can always fill that back in later. Okay, I think I missed this one here. Miss that one there. so these around here have been done, and so I'm just going to, I'm not going to rub them totally away because I still like the trace of those lines underneath. But I just want to get like show the pathway should be open, so that's how the KIrcher design is. And now it's just about finishing it all off. Okay, I'm just gonna, so I have issues if I make the video file too large when I'm filming. I just need to stop and restart. Okay, so now it's just a matter of finishing all this off. Now I hear a whole bunch of crossover happening, so to make sure I don't mess up there. Just to be careful not to run the lines over and block the pathways. Twice, cut once. Again, there will be a crossover here, so just again be really careful at that point. If you miss some, you can add them later, but if you run over the lines, that's it. Unless you're working with pencil, of course. That side done. Just a few left now. that one. Sometimes when you're using this, like the tip, the side of a pen will sit and glide along the ruler, so I think I've partially drew that line in. Again, this is a crossover area, so just make sure you don't ruin it. Just a tip, if you do cross over, then just do the whole thing crossing over, but you won't be doing the KIrcher one though, if that's the case. Either I probably won't spend time on the editor going through and adding, and so at the end when I'll show you just a static picture. So I'll put the KIrcher drawing next to it, and then you can see all the other details that go into it. Okay, so I think that's it for all of them. Again, I'm not going to rub too hard. I like having the idea of the vesicas in there as well, so I'll leave traces of them. I'll just go for these main dark lines. I only drew them dark again. Again, you can do it with a light pencil, and it's not an issue. And now, if you're erasing out, make sure it's easy to tear the paper if you're too aggressive as well. Another thing to avoid. Now, even though I do, I just like those little circles that I use to space out these pathways. Form a nice little touch. So when you're drawing them, if you're using something like that, you can sort of press hard, and so it's not even just about drawing. You can affect the paper and give it a texture by pushing hard, using a harder tip, and that sort of does give it that extra little bit of life. But you can be careful not to ruin the paper doing that. I have a nice roll of reasonably thick, sort of high quality paper, so I just cut strips off it. Trace there. Okay. Thankfully it didn't collapse on me. A little bit of obsolescence. Okay, well, there's one I started drawing before, and then the whole camera screwed up on me, and then the file wouldn't transfer over, so I had to do it again. But that's the template there. And the basics of the KIrcher design. Again, at this point I'll take some snapshots, I'll take a photo, I'll place that up and just run some variations. I'll have a link in the description. I'll try to find it from LewisMasonic channel, where they talk about the column of mercy and severity, and these other, with much Freemasons as well, this is a symbol that's used. In Kabbalah, I'll show the Porta Lucis, which is a variation on it, and the Robert Flood version, which doesn't look anything like this, but the Tree of Life it's still called. But this is the Athanasius KIrcher version. It just emerged from that really, there's so much info in there. Oh, I should have put that in the Geometrology ones, but the Rosicrucian, from the secret symbols of the Rosicrucians, where they've got a double Vesica with the moon at the bottom, the sun at the top, and I'll just show that because it's that double Vesica as well. So it's you'll see this, even though you won't see this Tree of Life, you'll see how the symbols that are found, Rosicrucians, all these type of people are using this as a basis form. Also this equilateral triangle, so if you just forget that part, this is also was a common symbol when I'm talking about sulfur in the alchemical times, and maybe sulfur and mercury. So I won't go into that for now. But yeah, it's corpus, anima, and spirit. So the body, the spirit, and anima translation. Life. The Latin origin, like an animation to give something sort of life. But that was also alchemical: salt, sulfur, and mercury. Salt it will melt at really high temperatures, like molten salt reactors, but essentially salt doesn't melt, doesn't burn. Sulfur does burn, like striking a match, and once it's burnt, it's gone. As where mercury, you can, for instance, you put gold or silver into mercury, it'll absorb it, then you can boil the mercury off, and it leaves you with the gold, but you can recapture the mercury vapor. So salt does not burn, sulfur does burn, and then you've lost it. In pure chemistry, no, but and mercury is something which you can burn or boil and recapture. It was like an early form at classifying elements and substances, like the periodic table as well. But okay, that's it. Rant over. Hopefully I'll remember. I'll put some links in the description. It's all, it's all compass and straight edge. Again, if you're going to draw regularly, something like that comes in really helpful. And that's it.